Family. Not everyone may have a comfy and loving relationship with them, but for most of us, it represents something so familiar that we take for granted. But if we suddenly realize what looks like our mother, brother, or sister is actually not our mother, brother, or sister, the sheer betrayal of our usual expectation of our family as a sort of an anchor of our worldly existence makes it unsettling so much more. But it looks like it's not an entirely rare occurrence. It's not clear what these imposters are and what they are trying to achieve by putting on the look of the family member. Could it be a ghost, or an alien, or some sort of doppelganger? It's not entirely unheard in Korean culture of the spirit of the dead family member luring the surviving family to death. But as far as I know, at least, there aren't such known supernatural beings in Korea as a shapeshifter or skinwalker that takes on the shape of one's beloved, which makes these stories even more compelling reads. Here are 4 stories from Korea about the imposters that pretend to be our closest family members. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. This is what my friend experienced when he was 18. Life in the last year of high school is a tough one. He was on the way home as usual at 1 a.m. after a long day at school and after-school lessons. The lift arrived that would take him up to his flat. Strangely, he didn't feel like to hop on it. Something was holding him back from going back home, he felt. But what else could he do so late in the day, and another long day at school and after-school lessons waiting after just a few hours' sleep? He opened the door to his flat on 10th floor. The strange feeling only intensified as he walked in. The space felt bleak. The only source of light was the blue lamp in the fish tank, so he just blamed the darkness. Then he saw a person standing in the balcony looking in, shocked, but soon relieved he was to see it was his mom. "Gosh, Mom, you scared me. You closed the shop earlier today." His mother ran a shop and usually came back later in the early hours of the day. He just went into his room, changed his clothes, and popped in the kitchen to grab some snack, and found a memo stuck on the fridge. "Dear son, you didn't forget I'm going on a trip with friends, did you? In the fridge are the meals prepared, just warm them up." Ah, yes. So she told him that she wouldn't be in tonight. But... He quickly looked over the balcony. Mom was still there looking in. Mom? He stopped himself in the middle. She looked like Mom, all right, but a blank stare at him was chilling, and the eyes were inhumanly large. He felt all the strands of hair standing on ends. That's not human, he thought. That's not Mom. His father worked in a different town and would come home for weekends only, and his older brother also went to university away from home, leaving him alone at home. All his instinct told him to get out of there. He sidewalked towards the door, never losing the sight of the thing in the balcony. And it also didn't lose the sight of him, just turning its head as he moved away. He was scared to death if it would not rush towards him right next second. As soon as he got out of the flat, he sprinted down to the ground floor. Heart was jumping out of his mouth, but he never stopped listening if it wasn't following him down. Only then he realized he didn't have his phone on him, was barefooted and in pajamas. Having no other options, he walked to the concierge's office. He looked up at his flat, only to find it was still looking down at him from the balcony. He was all tears by then. With the help of concierge, he called the police and his older brother. When the police arrived, the flat was empty. Everything was exactly as he left, with lights on in his room and kitchen, and no sign of intrusion. And of course, police wouldn't buy the story about something looking exactly like his mom, but not his mom. Meanwhile, his brother also arrived. He expected his brother going ballistic for calling him in at that hour for non-issue. But what he said was, "So you saw it too?" His brother's story was, when he came back home previous weekend, the flat was empty as mom was at the shop and the younger brother was with the friends. He was out to fetch some cigarette and snacks and back. He too sensed something was off the second he entered inside. He had left the light on in the living room, but now it was off. Just the television was still on. He switched the light on and saw his mom standing in the bedroom looking at him through the door opened ajar. "Whoa, Mom, are you pranking or something?" But it didn't take long to realize something was terribly wrong. He looked up at her again, and the eyes weren't humans. They were all white with only tiny dots of pupils. He couldn't move or think while his mind was shouting, "Run away!" Just then, "Hey son, what are you doing there?" It was Mom just entering the hallway. He looked around to find his real mom. "What's up? Are you not well?" Mom asked. He quickly looked back at the bedroom door. Now he'd have to save Mom if that thing should attack her too. There was nothing. He entered the bedroom. Nothing. Windows were locked, nobody hiding in the wardrobe, nothing under the bed. Mom didn't take him seriously, just brushing everything with, "Are you ill?" "Is our flat haunted?" the older brother said. The brothers looked at each other in silence. They spent the rest of the night at a 24-hour internet cafe. When I was 17, after the finals at last came to a close, I had a great day with my best friend. After a cinema and snack bar, I went back to her place together in the evening because she had an Xbox. We entered the place and saw her mom sitting on the sofa in the living room. I met her many times before, so I greeted her with a smile. She seemed not even noticing me and asked my friend, "Have you eaten? You should eat. Eat something." And then carried on mumbling to herself about dinner. Her mom was usually a kind and bright character, and I was wondering something might have happened. Then my friend, with a white face, grabbed my hand and dragged me to her room. God, I've never seen her face making such a frightening expression. I asked her what was wrong, but she just took out her phone and started dialing somebody. "Dad, it's me. Mom hasn't returned to Korea yet, had she?" she said to the phone. That week, her mom was away to meet her mother and brother's family, immigrated to the US. Only then I remembered myself that indeed my friend had told me earlier that week that she was tired of being in charge of her house chores on top of the finals while her mom was away. My head went blank. We just huddled together in fear and tears until her dad came back home a couple of hours later. By then, there was nobody in the living room. We still talk about the day whenever we reunite. Our conclusion is that a ghost must have taken a mom's shape to tempt us. This happened to my friend. Let's call her Mina. Mina was then a high school student. As usual, she came back home about 10 in the evening after a long day in school. It was dark in the house, except for the light in the kitchen. She just assumed her mom should be working there and just shouted, "I'm home!" Indeed, she heard mom shouting back, "Okay." The following day was the first day of the finals, and Mina sat herself down at the desk right away. Test for 3 subjects meant a lot to go through. She heard her room door opening. She turned around to find her younger brother walking in with a drowsy face. "I'm gonna watch you here till I fall asleep," said he. Her brother was much younger than her and was a bit of a spoilt prince, but Mina nevertheless adored him and just replied, "Yeah, whatever, but don't disturb me." The subject she was working on was Japanese. To help herself memorize new phrases and words, she spoke them out loud. Then she heard her brother repeating them. Irritated, Mina turned around and shouted, "Told you not to disturb me." Her brother was lying on his belly on the floor as if he was doodling something in that position, and didn't react at all. "Don't pretend to be asleep. Now, do it again, I'll spank ya," Mina said half-jokingly. But brother didn't react or move at all. Mina just turned back to a book, and as before read the Japanese phrases out. And brother repeated them again in mocking tone. "What did I tell you?" Mina turned around again, to find him exactly in the same posture as before. He usually loved to play pranks and tricks, so she decided ignoring him would be the best strategy. When she turned back to her desk again, this time she heard her mom asking her from outside of her room, "Mina, would you like some snack or something?" "No thanks, Mom. I'll later get myself some tea or something," Mina replied. But then, "Mina, would you like some snack or something?" Mom repeated. Mina thought she didn't hear her reply and said, "No thanks," loudly. Now that her concentration interrupted, she decided to make a loo break and get herself a glass of water too. Downstairs was dark. Had Mom already gone to bed? Then she heard the front door opening. Her dad was working in another town then. Mom should be in, and her brother in her bedroom. Mina tensed up in the middle of the stairs looking at the door. It was her mom, both hands carrying groceries. "Mom? When did you go out? Why have you left the whole house in dark?" Mina said. "What? I've been out all day and just back now. Why would I leave lights on when I went out at lunchtime?" Mom said. Mina was confused and didn't know what to think. She rushed upstairs and to her room. It was empty. She quickly checked the brother's room. He was sound asleep in his own bed. Next day, she interrogated her brother, but he denied he ever entered the room that night before. In the end, she just decided he was lying, because she didn't want to think about another possibilities. I was born and grew up in Seoul. When I was young, I and my sister spent most of our summer vacations at grandparents' in the countryside, which was a welcome change of the scene for us. I think this happened when I was about 10. As usual, we really had a good time. There were only 3 young kids in the small village, so we were very, very welcomed by them, and we soon formed a gang roaming about the stream, fields, and mountains, catching frogs and fish, playing hide and seek, feeding cows. After such a busy day, we washed off sweat and dust of the day in the nearby stream and came back to grandparents to have dinner. A day starts and ends early in the countryside. There wasn't even a TV, and Grandma and Grandpa went to bed practically right after dinner at about 9. I and my sister would no way go to bed so early, so play the board game I brought with into late nights. One night, already in bed, my sister shook me up that she needed to pee. Old-fashioned privy to an old farmhouse is usually located outside, about 10 meters away from the house in my grandparents' case. I was fairly fearless, but my sister wasn't, so I accompanied her to the privy in the pitch dark of the countryside night, and waited by the door, still half asleep, occasionally grumbling to her to finish quickly. Then we came back to our room together and slept through for the rest of the night. A few days later, I went to the privy during the day, but oh, how odd. I suddenly felt dizzy and my sight went white. I only got around sensing my foot falling into a puddle. Oh dear, my one foot had fallen into the privy hall and into the goo underneath. I cried. Fortunately, my grandpa heard me crying and came to my rescue. The rumor spreaded, and the village kids teased me for having fallen into the privy pit. I was rather distressed with the whole incident, and I didn't even go out to play for a couple of days. One night, sister woke me up again in the middle of the night to accompany her to the privy. And then she started disturbing my sleep almost every day for her nightly visit to the privy. I put up with that for a few days like a good patient brother, but in the end I had to tell her. Sis, can't you go and do your business by yourself now? What? You wake me up every night for that. It's too much. What are you saying? I haven't been to the privy at night nowadays, she protested. What? You're pulling my legs? Don't be silly. Indeed, she had rarely played a prank or lied to me. But then, what was all that every night for the past few days? That night, once again, somebody shook me up from my sleep. I'd usually have just grabbed her hand, not as much to bother to look at her with my still half-closed eyes, and just guided her to the privy. But not tonight. I opened my eyes wide and turned around to look at her in the face. It was her, all right. I asked with a bit shaky voice, Need a pee, sis? Yes, come with me, she said. Is that really you, sis? I asked. Of course. Who else? She seemed smiling a bit. So I took her to the privy, waited outside, and back again. Next day I talked to her again. "I told you should try and go and pee by yourself." "That again? I don't go to privy at night nowadays," sister said. "You did too, just last night. You're lying." "What's up with you? I'm going to sleep with my grandma from tonight," she said. Well, whatever. So I took the whole room to myself that night and fell asleep. And somebody shook me up once again. I remembered sister was sleeping with the grandparents. Then who is this? "Come, I need to pee." I didn't know how to respond. "Hurry, any second now." I was sweating. I turned around slowly. Was it her? It looked like her, in her clothing. But is that really her? I couldn't dare to look at her directly, but the shape seemed not quite like that of my sister. Then she, or it, took hold of my hand and dragged me out to the privy. When she disappeared into the privy, leaving me at the door as usual, I thought it over and started sprinting to the grandparents' room. Then I heard her bursting out of the privy and chasing after me. That few meter distance to the room seemed to be stretching forever, and my feet moving ever so slowly. Just as the steps behind me got so close that I felt my back of the head itchy, I managed to jump into grandparents' room, crying. Everybody got up, including my sister by my grandma's side. I cried something was after me, but there was nothing anymore, and Grandpa told me it was just a nightmare and wouldn't hear my teary protest anymore. From that night on, I too slept by my grandparents' side, which seemed to help. The evening before we went back to Seoul, sister and I came out after dinner to bid goodbye to the neighbors. By the time we were on the way back, dusk was setting. It was still a muggy summer day, and sister suggested we should have one last dip in the stream. The water was indeed refreshing. Then sister started walking away towards upstream, saying it was cooler there. I argued that it would make our clothes wet, but she said it was no matter, and was already now waist deep in the water and still walking further away. I had to stop her or follow her. I grabbed a flashlight and called her out, pointing the light at her. Only then I could see her face clearly. It wasn't my sister. I was already in the water waist deep. I turned around to run away, but my feet slipped and fell face first into the water. I was out of my mind. I couldn't breathe. I could not get up. Something snatched my foot and was now dragging me deeper water of the barrage. My mind was dimming away. I opened my eyes. I was in Grandpa's room. Grandpa came out to search for me because my sister had returned alone and found me struggling in the shallow water. I cried out to sister if she had not suggested a dip in the stream, but she had no idea what I was saying. She was back home and was packing. I didn't know whom to believe anymore. Fortunately, we came back to Seoul safely, and my dad, upon hearing my story, just brought us some beef barbecue, saying that it was just my weak body and mind. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. This was another less culture-specific episode. I definitely have many more themes I'd like to tackle that is more particular to Korea, But I'm currently trying to find more materials and stories, enough to create dedicated episodes. I'll get there, and meanwhile, I hope you enjoyed these nevertheless amusing stories. If you like my works, please subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell to help the new channel grow. Until the next, have another lovely week and take care.